We are super excited for this session today on no-code tools with Matt Graham. Matt is HBS 17 grad and the CEO of Rapid Dev. He is an expert in no-code, and this session is really meant to give you all kind of practical takeaways as you're thinking about using different no-code solutions over the summer, and as you're thinking about like your tech stack and things like that. So thank you so much to Matt for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you to get started.
All right, thank you very much. So like Emily said, I run a development agency, and we work with folks all over the world that are building MVPs, starting companies. And so I've seen a lot of how no code can really benefit entrepreneurs. So hopefully you guys will have some good takeaways today. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, this is strange. Usually I can see you guys, but you guys have disappeared from my screen for some reason. I swear oh, you're on my third screen, but I never like that. Sorry. I swear I use Zoom every day and I just have a problem. Okay, great. Put you right over here. All right, so let's get started, folks. What we're going to talk about today is what is no code. If you aren't familiar with no code, or it's kind of a nebulous term, I'll dive into that, just give you some context. Then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what you guys are working on, what it is you're trying to prototype, what you're trying to, what hypotheses you're trying to test, and then we'll dive into how no code can fit your use case. So it's going to be pretty interactive, try to solve problems for as many of you as I can. We'll have some time at the end to answer questions and even dive in a little further if you'd like to about your specific use case. So, whoops, before going to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about my own story at HBS. While I was there, I was really involved in the entrepreneurial scene. I started a company with a classmate, and while I was there, there were maybe like 3 people that knew how to code. I don't know if it's different now, but it was a very, very small number of people, and they were very, very popular. Everybody wanted to talk to these guys. Everybody wanted to pitch them their idea, get them on board with their company. It was hard to start a company at HBS because of this, and it's hard to find technical co-founders and people to work with. And this is before no code was really even a thing. No one really used the phrase no code. No one knew what that meant. So, you defaulted to using code. But that's totally different now. When I went through this, I started my company at HBS. We had to give a large portion of our equity away. We had to not only give our equity away to our technical co-founder, but we had to use our seed money to pay engineers and contractors to help us build the app. And then you're waiting and waiting for your MVP to get launched, right? So all this is totally different now with no code. You don't need to give half of your company away. You don't need to spend all that money on contractors and agencies and third parties to help you build the app or build your MVP or your prototype. And you definitely don't need to wait this long. So let's dive into it. What is no code? Think of no code as sort of like the interchangeable parts within manufacturing. So how many of you will need a login box for your prototype? How many of you may need a user profile for your prototype or for any app that you're building in general, right? Most apps need these things. So why would you have your engineering team sit down and code this line by line when you could just treat it as a module, something that you drag and drop into your application? So that's the difference. Everything is much more modular. You have components that are preset, and you can sort of think of them as putting them together as Legos. So that's why no code is so powerful. You don't have to sit there and code these components line by line. Let's walk through a tangible example. When I first got into the development world, there was a customer that was quoted $550,000 to build their app in 18 months. What do you think the price and the time was to build it on no code? Just throw some guesses out there. It's totally okay. You can just shout them out. $550,000, 18 months to build it on code. What do you think it would cost, and how long would it take to do it on no code? Any guesses?
I think on no code today would be like $30.
$30? $30, okay. A little bit more than that. Any other guesses?
Bubble was like 40 per month.
Say again.
Bubble.io was like 40 per month. I recently tried to use it per user.
Yeah. So that's the per user cost. The actual development cost to pay people to build the app, like we were able to do it for $70,000 in 5 months. So drastically different costs. So there's very few things that are 8 times cheaper and almost 4 times faster. You know, everyone talks about having an idea that's 10x better, but there's very few things in life that are actually 10x better, like tangibly, quantitatively, and no code is one of them. So that's why our agency has moved into no code very aggressively. It's silly to use code when you can use these tools for such a cheaper price point and such a faster timeline. Okay, so this is just one example, but the point is, as you guys think about building your prototypes, no code's really got to be a serious consideration for you. Okay. So can you use no code in your MVP? That's the main topic today, now that you understand a little bit about what no code is. Let's split it into a couple categories. What I've seen, use cases I've seen no code work really well for. Marketplaces, so think of anything where you have a buyer and seller transacting together. This is bread and butter for no code, to be built on no code. Really module component standard parts that can be put together to build a marketplace very quickly. Same thing with social media platforms, think clones of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tinder, all those types of platforms, very easy to build with no code tools. Directories, listings, any type of community, gated content. If you have some sort of media idea that revolves in the media space and you want to have gated content, very easy to build on no code. I think most things crypto related can be built on no code. Any online stores like Shopify, think of how easy it is to just set up a Shopify store now. I think something interesting for this group, SaaS applications. So if you're trying to sell to companies some sort of SaaS app, think like custom CRMs, project management tools, workflow creation or management, those work pretty well within the no-code space as well and could be applicable to some of you. And then AI is a hot topic this year. Now it's hot in the prior years, but AI, the nexus of AI and no-code actually have a really high overlap. And you can do a lot of, you can't like build your models in no-code, but you can hook up your prototypes to third-party AI solutions really easily to add AI to your prototypes if that's part of your hypothesis you're trying to test. Okay, so those are all things that if you are on this call and you think components of what you need in a prototype fall into some of these categories, there's definitely ways to do it on no code. Things that I see that don't work that great on no code yet, like anything HIPAA compliant, healthcare related, really hard to do in the no code space still, so much regulation. Anything AR, VR, gaming side, there are tools for that, but it's just not as popular yet. Anything like editing video or audio. So hopefully most of you are in kind of this side category of what your idea is and what you're trying to work on, and we'll dive into it from there. So quick poll, how many, we're gonna ask, what tools have you researched or are considering for your MVP or your prototype this summer? Here's some I've labeled, and feel free to add whatever other ones you have. So wow, a lot of people have heard of Bubble. No one's heard of the other ones, or at least are not researching them. For Airtable, Softer, Zapier. Okay, other, none. Okay, I can't, is there any way to see other or no? Probably not, right? Okay, that's okay. Well, Bubble is definitely one of the best no-code platforms. So we'll talk a lot about Bubble today. Really great. I'll kind of go through all of these so you have an idea of where they are in the no-code ecosystem and how they could potentially help you. But I would say Airtable, Bubble, Zapier, these are your critical ones that you probably could be very helpful for you this summer. Okay, and then we have a few who aren't familiar with them, and we'll get to learn about them as we go. Okay, very cool. So how do we choose the tool? This is like a broad grouping of the tools that are out there. Okay. If you, a critical decision you'll have to make, there's a bunch, but one decision is to decide, is your app going to be on mobile as a native app, like downloaded in the App Store, your prototype, or can you just do it on web? Most of you, I hope most of you can just do it on web. That's much, much easier. Most of you don't need to get to the point where you need this as an app in the App Store for this early stage, just to test your hypotheses and prototype something. You can just get something on a web page and that will be satisfactory. So this is this box is mobile. If you do want to talk about mobile, Flutterflow is really one of the best tools for getting your prototype onto the app stores. Now, if we go back to web, let's divide web into these two categories, box number 1 and box number 3. Box number 1 are like websites. This is probably where most of you will have success and want to start out. Is just getting a simple website out there where you can have a form on your website. You can start having some intake to get some leads or some initial customers to do your testing with. So this is great. I always say website, the difference between a website and a web app is a web app has a login box. Okay, as soon as you have a login box, you basically have an app because you have a database and you're going to be creating data and saving data on users. So website, just really simple, tons of tools out there. Webflow is great, Software is great. Strikingly, Squarespace, Wix isn't in here, but that's another great one. So we'll talk more about how you can get your prototype up using the website. Web Builder, many of you mentioned Bubble. Bubble reigns supreme. HBS founders who started Bubble about a decade ago, and it's a great community, amazing product, and it is definitely by far the very best web app builder. So if you are thinking about a prototype that requires logins for users, store data, and have functionality, Bubble is really probably going to be a great tool for you. Other tools that you guys mentioned in the poll, Zapier and Airtable, these are sort of like must-haves for a lot of prototyping. Think of Airtable as like just a fancy spreadsheet if you haven't used it before. It's just like Excel or Google Sheets, but much more powerful, very easy to learn. And same thing with Zapier. Zapier allows you to connect all your data together. So main takeaways, Bubble, Airtable, Zapier, Webflow, Wix. These are the kind of different categories and where you want to focus your research as you get into wanting to build a prototype. Okay, so with that, let's think. What is it you're going to build? Before you can decide, you have to think through what are the key hypotheses you want to test, right? You only have a few months during the summer during this program. And then as you start your second year, you can keep going with it. But what are the key things that you want to test? And what are going to be the critical features for you to test those hypotheses? Okay, so let's go ahead and break out for a little bit. Let's do a 10-minute breakout, small groups, and discuss with your group. We'll come back to the main group and we'll talk together about what are the main hypotheses and the features that you would need in a small prototype to achieve this. I got to join one of the groups. It was a great conversation, but let's open it up to everybody to go ahead and share what they're working on, general hypothesis they have, maybe what are the key features they want to test. Maybe we can figure out the right tool for you as we go along with the rest of the session. Any volunteers to start off with? Don't be shy. Teresa, you had a very good one. You want to you want to kick off the group?
I was just waiting for the cold call. Yeah, so I'm this summer creating a double-sided marketplace for product designers and UX researchers to be able to test their products with people with disabilities. And the hypothesis I'm trying to test is whether companies will like it to be selecting like 10 or so people to be in their focus group, or it can be like them just going onto the website, finding all the characteristics they were looking for from disabilities, but to other characteristics like race, gender, and kind of that self-service. And Matt had provided great solutions of other websites to kind of consider that can help with marketplaces too.
Yeah, so this one's really, really interesting. Marketplaces are great for building on these no-code tools, because it's really tough to test the marketplace concept, right? You do surveys and you go through the initial ways that you can test your idea, talking to folks, putting something really basic out there. But eventually you're going to reach the point where you need to sort of let people connect randomly on the internet with this. And no code has really taken off on marketplaces specifically. So what do you need? You need the ability for the user to log in, to create their profile, post what their task is, and then the other person to select into doing that service. And those are like the basic elements. There's lots of other bells and whistles you can do, but that's like really the main feature set. And it's achievable even within a few weeks for you to get something out there, get it online, and start inviting friends, family, and people, communities that you know that would take advantage of this. So our go-to is always Bubble. Usually people always want to think about Bubble, but for marketplaces, I shared in the channel an app called ShareTribe. It's not really an app, it's a platform, and it's specifically for building marketplaces. Very quickly. Bubble is a little heavy, it'll take a little bit longer to build this in Bubble. But ShareTribe is specifically, I bet you could get this out very quickly, Teresa, and start testing it on the internet with folks. So yeah, great example. Any other folks want to share what they're working on, what the hypothesis is, and what the key features are that they need to test? Don't be shy. How about the other woman from the group I was in? Sorry, I missed your name and I don't see you on the screen now. You were
Anita, yeah.
Oh, there you are. Online store, that's what it was, online store.
No worries, happy to share. So we are working on a secondhand furniture business, and one of the key hypotheses we want to test is kind of around buyer behavior. So whether or not people would be willing to purchase secondhand furniture in bundles. So related to that, from a website perspective, we're looking for an e-commerce platform that can support a bundling feature and presenting kind of products on the website in bundle formats and allow transactions that way. So that's kind of one kind of key feature we're optimizing around.
That's awesome. I love this example because it's more than just an e-commerce store. There's this key feature that backs up the key hypothesis that you have, which is the whole point of this presentation. So there's a lot of e-commerce tools, or sorry, Shopify is the most well-known. Everyone knows that you can just create a Shopify store really quickly. I'm not sure if it has this bundling concept, but usually within these tools, there's a package concept where if you buy this and you buy this, you get some sort of discount. So you may be able to hack it together. Nothing's ever super clear in this space. When you're trying to build your prototype, you're doing something no one else has done. And so that feature may not be out of the box for some of those easier platforms like Shopify. But for sure, 100% guaranteed, something like Bubble can get that feature out there very quickly. I'll just share my screen again here. give you an example. Here, right here. So if we'll talk a lot about Bubble throughout this because it's such a powerful tool, but they have like an entire section of templates that are stores. Some of these are ours. We have about 200 in the marketplace, but here's one of ours. It's like an e-commerce store like Apple, and it's free. You download this. Maybe you can go ahead and tweak it a little bit so it has that bundling concept. You change it all the way from like, Apple products to furniture, and bam, you're off to the races in a few weeks with something to be able to test that used furniture bundling concept. So main thing again, focus in on what is the key hypothesis, what's the key feature, and then we figure out the tool that can accommodate that. And there's 42 results here, so you can find all sorts of different e-commerce store templates in Bubble. Keep going, guys. Anything else? Anyone else?
I can share one. I don't know if it has a real use case with no code, or if I should just like bootstrap it myself. But basically, I'm working on a company that we're helping managers build more inclusive and productive teams at work. And what we're hoping to test this summer is sending out surveys to managers and their teams to collect personal and professional information about each of the employees, and then run weekly sentiment surveys with the teams. And so the key functionality we'd be looking for is like the ability to collect data easily all in one place, organize it by team and by individual. We definitely want to have some consideration around data privacy since it's sensitive information, and then the ability to potentially even send nudges to managers, whether it's through the tool or ideally to a manager's email, but have all that information about like what kinds of nudges we want to be sending in one place. So I don't know if that is something we would use this kind of solution for.
Yeah, well, actually, we built a couple of these, and definitely in Bubble. Like you can definitely do something like this in Bubble. Do those surveys or questionnaires, are they configurable, or are they pretty standardized every single time?
They'd be pretty standardized every time.
Okay, so that's a huge advantage you have as you're assessing different solutions. So if you can use something like Typeform and then marry it inside of a Bubble app. So you set up all the permissions, the nudges, the schedules within the Bubble app, but it sends a Typeform, which is just a standard, quick, easy form. Then you can use those two tools pretty seamlessly, because sometimes it takes a lot of effort to build the surveys and questionnaires inside the Bubble, especially if the questions are changing all the time. So yeah, that could be like a good tech stack for you, possibly. But I would say don't give up on no code. No code is perfect for that kind of thing, specifically Bubble. And there may be other solutions I'm not thinking of just off the limb here, but definitely no code could work.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's cool. Like so you can see like you have these hypotheses or some features, you're not quite sure, but the key thing is you know exactly what the feature is that you want in your MVP or your prototype in order to test the idea. So there's lots of other considerations you can have, but these are really all secondary. Like, is it going to scale? Like, how feature rich is the platform you're using? These things are things that you may want to jump to at the get-go, but you don't need to actually worry about that right now at the stage that you're at early on. Let's break the tools into a couple of different categories. Simple, fast tools, things that you can learn within a week. You can build something within a week. It will have some limited functionality, but at least you can move really quickly. Okay, versus other tools that have more complexity, so they're more feature rich, but it's going to take a little bit longer to build them, maybe like a month to learn and build something, and you'll have some medium level of functionality that you can put into your prototype. And then the most complex no-code tools, they take many months to learn and build, but you can build pretty much anything. So let's just think of those kind of three categories and go through some examples. So like a really dominant tech stack, I think someone said Wix before, but Webflow is like Wix. And then you tie it into like a spreadsheet database like Airtable. You add a member login using MemberStack, and then you tie it all together using Zapier. So if your hypotheses and features that you need can fit into the simple and fast category, definitely do this, right? And this is an example of a really powerful tech stack where you can have a kind of like a fake login member stack on your Webflow site to give it the sense that they're logging into something and you're logging some basic data. Okay, here's another really powerful one. I think someone in the group mentioned Wix, Typeform, and Zapier. You set up your Wix site, you put a Typeform on the site to collect your leads or a questionnaire, and then you zap it. So zap means you send an email to somebody, you send a Slack message to your team, you create a payment instance in Stripe, something like that. So all the automations that have to happen when a user hits your website and fills something out. Okay, so simple and fast category, all of you are very smart. You can learn these tools very quickly and get something up and running in no time. More kind of medium level complexity, a tool like Adalo, which is more for mobile apps. Glide is more for web apps. Softer is for web apps. These tools take, I don't think this is relevant to the group because many of you indicated you had never heard of these tools. If you have heard of them, just know that they are kind of in the medium level of complexity, but have more features as a result. And then everyone said they had, not everyone, but most people had heard of Bubble. Bubble is way out there on the complexity side. That's why it's so powerful, is you can do way more. And remember, when I say complexity, I'm thinking within the no-code space. So it's not like you have to go and learn code in a 6-month boot camp. You can learn Bubble within a few weeks. But to get really proficient at Bubble, you need like a couple months. But that shouldn't scare you. Like there's ways around that. And, you know, I'll talk about it a little bit more. Just know that this is more on the complex side of the no-code ecosystem. Okay. We're going to skip this just because we don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to do this breakout. But common myths that I think people have heard about or may hear with no-code. This may be more relevant in the years past, and maybe it's not as relevant now. But people are always like, it won't scale to 100 billion users. It's not secure. It won't do what I need it to do. VCs are never going to fund me. I could just have it built on code, no problem. Or you'll talk to someone like an engineer with a traditional background in coding, and they'll say no code's dangerous. Okay, so these things are all kind of myths that we can debunk. You're not going to have 100 billion users on your no code app. That is true, but that's not the purpose. You don't need to plan for that level of scale. You can get to thousands, hundreds of thousands on no code actually. But you don't need to worry about that right now. You just need to focus on the first couple hundred users for your prototype. The second one, it won't do what you need to do. Definitely, no code is extremely powerful. You can do a lot of things within the no code ecosystem. So that list I went through before, marketplaces, social media apps, you can copy and clone Jira or Asana, which is very complex software. So really powerful stuff. It all can be secure if you know how to secure it, or you can pay consultants to jump in and secure it for you. And guaranteed, if you go the code route, it's going to be more than 3 months. You know, every now and then you may get a very talented CTO that can help you build it quickly. And it definitely is possible, but on average, most things take much longer in code. I think in general, just there's a divide in the community between people who know code and people that use no code. And there's just tension and hard feelings between the two groups, as the engineers generally don't like the no code movement or are kind of slow to warm up to it. Okay. So how do you get started with all this stuff? You can research, gave you some tips today about like what direction to head your research in. Hopefully you found like a few tools that would be useful. You can go research those. Eventually you need to get to the point where you're going to be able to kind of put it all together yourself or outsource it. And so some really helpful things I did when I was learning these tools, I started a company and I used a lot of these tools to build our MVP. You can do a small boot camp. You can just watch YouTube or pay for a course on Udemy. My favorite one is to get a coach. You just learn it yourself. And whenever you get stuck, you have a coach jump in, help you. It's like a tutor for a few hours, like an hour a day, and they get you unstuck and you're on your way. So I think that's particularly really effective. These are all really low cost methods for you to learn these tools very quickly. Within the summer, you could be an expert at these. Another kind of pro tip is that template page I had up on the screen. I think there's over 1,000 templates within Bubble. Like literally anything you want to build. There's Airbnb clone. There's Uber clones. Let's just type it in. Uber. Does your idea have anything to do with on-demand services? Then you could just go ahead and copy this free template and change your logo, your branding, change the text in a few areas, and bam, you got basically Uber, which took $100,000 build Uber, and now you can just do it in an hour by clicking copy of this template. So it's super powerful. Like check out some of these if you have an idea that you think you need Bubble for. Templates are a great place to start. There's always the service providers out there that can build as well for you, but I don't think. Sorry, let me get this slideshow moving. For more complex pieces of something that you need built, if you have a really hard feature in years past, I've talked to folks and they just have a really difficult feature to build, but it's critical for their hypothesis. You can outsource maybe some small components of that. But yeah, these are some shortcuts for helping you figure out what tool you need and learn how to use it yourself so you can get your prototype off the ground. A few extra slides here, but I just want to make sure we have enough time for questions. So we can just open it up for questions now. You guys can ask me pretty much anything specific to your startup, your use case. We can figure out what no-code tool could work for you, or just ask some of these things on the side here.
Hi, Matt. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. So I'm Grace. So my venture is sort of building a TurboTax for carbon credit issuance. So making it easier for companies to be able to get through the process. So similar to sort of the tax filing process is actually very complicated, a lot of paperwork and stuff like that. So we're thinking about what that prototype would look like and working on that. I guess my question is, it is actually quite customized in a sense. It's not like a marketplace or an e-commerce site that is more generic and can be, applicable to different use cases. So I don't know if you have any recommendation of whether Bubble could do something like that, or is it kind of too customized for it to kind of build it on a no-code too? Because I think what we're struggling is the current process is actually super complicated, and the platform that we imagine in mind is actually going to be much more complicated than what we've thought because of the existing process. So I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say 100% guaranteed Bubble can do it. I built it was R&D tax credit process. So in the US, there's an initiative for R&D tax credits to encourage R&D. It's a pretty complicated process. Lots of forms to be uploaded, lots of calculations that have to happen. And so, we built this platform where people would upload all their stuff. They go through a long laundry list of questions that have lots of logic loops, if this, then that, do these calculations, store this data. So it's all possible within Bubble for sure. I can't think of any other tool because I'm always trying to figure out what's the simplest tool for you to test those assumptions. I think based on what I understand right now, Bubble probably is more appropriate for what you're trying to do. But I don't think you should worry about if Bubble can do it. Bubble should be able to handle something like that.
Got it. Thank you so much. So I guess right now what we're thinking about is think through what the product should look like, and then we'll see how we can migrate it to the Bubble platform once we have a good idea of what the boxes should look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, usually the standard process is low fidelity wireframes, then high fidelity wireframes, and then build the app. the thing you want to be careful of, and I should have mentioned this in presentation for everybody, is don't overbuild your app. Whatever you guys do, don't overbuild. Focus on what is that key feature, because no code's so easy. It's like, oh yeah, we can add that, we can add this. Oh, and then some people will be building yourself, and you'll look at the clock, it'll be like 4 a.m. and you'll be like, oh my God, what happened? Like you just got stuck in bubble hole. Like bubble will suck you in. If some of you guys are already using bubble, you know what I mean? You could just stay on bubble and get in there for like 12 hours and not realize you just missed all your classes and everything. So because no code is so powerful, it kind of leads people to just start building and building and overbuilding all the time. And you really want to be careful of that. So just word of caution, but in general, a good process to follow is low fidelity wireframes like concept sketches, then high fidelity wireframes, and then building in bubble. You could even skip the high fidelity side if you want. If you have a good design sense, you can just go ahead and design directly inside of bubble to save yourself some time for sure. Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure who's next.
Juan Pablo.
Thanks. I know that you just mentioned like the different learning paths of Udemy, the coaches, YouTube videos, but talking specifically about Bubble, since it seems it's the no-brainer to go in most cases, is there like any like crash course, boot camp, something that with your experience you see like is the best way to get started for someone that hasn't been using it and wants to get like just a sense of how it works?
Yeah, there's, let's dive in a little more granular layer. There used to be boot camps that are like 6 weeks long. That's probably not what you're looking for. You're probably looking for more like a 3-hour overview. So if you're looking more for like the crash course, 1 hour, 3 hours, like Udemy has a lot of great courses. Another company called Zero Code has a great set of courses. I'll put it in the chat for everybody. Code.com. So that will, things like that, especially courses on Udemy, will give you enough familiarity where you can start to get in there and play around. Because when you first open Bubble, you're kind of like totally lost. You don't know what's going on. There's too many buttons to click. It's very foreign, right? So if you spend at least 2 or 3 hours on a crash course, one of those pre-recorded ones, you will at least understand where to click. What I've seen is people who have like an engineering background, any type of engineering, doesn't have to be computer science, or are really good at finance with spreadsheets, like can make really complex spreadsheets. That kind of thinking applies very well to Bubble. So you should be able to pick it up fairly quickly with that. And you're gonna get stuck on really stupid little things. And you're gonna be like, where is the button for this? And so that's where the coach comes in, instead of you spending hours trying to search Google and you don't know what word you're trying to search. The coach can just solve it in like 5 seconds for you. So I think some combination of that, not just one or the other, is really powerful to help you learn quickly. Juan.
Thank you. Just the quick follow-up, the coaches, you get them on Bubble like developers, like those kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'll show you the coaching pay site. And then Upwork is the other place where you can find, I know like everybody, so you can always just ask me too. There's the coaching page. Those people are quite expensive. And they're probably better suited for more complex coaching. Let me share one in particular. I like this guy, which is probably No Code Minute. Let me see if I can highlight it. Let's see. That one's good for like beginners who are starting out in No Code Minute. And then Upwork has a lot of coaches as well that you can try to search for. So at the early days, you don't need a super expert. You just need someone who's 6 months ahead of you on Bubble.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll give my email address so anyone can feel free to email me questions. Just put HBS in the subject, otherwise it's going to get filtered into a bunch of different spots and I might not see it. So I can always direct you to exact people that I know that could help you or resources in the community. Okay, I think we had another hand up.
Angie?
Hello. My question is, can you use Bubble or another no-code to create a custom chatbot to train it on your own data, or you provided the data and then you train it?
Yeah, so this one's tricky. There's a lot of different kind of solutions that are popping up. I think if you want a chatbot, Bubble, specifically a chatbot, there's other solutions that are emerging that are better suited for this. You can still do it in Bubble. So you can create like a vector database. You load in all the knowledge that you want into that vector database. And then you just make Bubble the front end. So the Bubble is the chatbot that pops up and people type into it, that kind of thing. But the back end is more outside of Bubble. It's in a different system. I forgot the name of the vector database we use. Oh shoot, I can't remember. I'm sorry. It'll come to me as soon as we hang up. But I think this is very popular, chatbots in general. So I think there's probably tools that I'm unaware of that have sprung up overnight that are better suited for what you're looking for. My hunch. Sorry, I can't be more helpful.
And Shrishti, I know you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Yes. Hey, hi, thanks, Matt. This is very helpful. So I'm trying to build like an app for personal wealth management, and I'm yet to figure out like which direction my solution will go in, but it's either gonna be like something along the robo advisory side, like a Betterment or a Wealthfront for the Indian market, or it's gonna be something that allows you to compare your portfolios to your friends or your peers and kind of like replicate them. So for any of these, or for apps in the personal wealth management space, and also like this is something where data privacy and data security is like of utmost importance. Like what are some of, can this be done on no code solutions, and then what are some of the tools that I could use for it?
Yeah, so this one sounds pretty complex to me. I would say Bubble could work, and I'm not 100% sure, but it's probably unlikely that it's only Bubble. You may need to do what we call hybrid apps, where you have a Bubble app and then you have a portion of the app is on code. So like you may need some portion of your database outside of Bubble and spun up on a server, and to do calculations to compare data sets, because Bubble's not a great calculator. But then once those calculations are done, you can display it in a Bubble app. So that's my hunch. Not 100% sure. We'd need to get into weeds a little bit together, but generally I would say don't discount, for all your ideas, almost all of them, like don't discount no code right off the bat, even if it doesn't have every single feature. The great thing about a lot of these platforms is you can insert code to get around something that's not natively available within the platform, especially with Bubble. You can insert code anywhere you want into Bubble. And so that's like a superpower. So it can basically do anything.
Got it. Thank you. And just to follow up on this, are there any like resources for doing some sort of a hybrid building, which is like inserting code into Bubble, like any particular web resources or any coaches that I could refer to for this?
Yeah, like if you went on that coaching website, if you talk to any of them, but you know, like a lot of people will just talk to you about your app for free because you're a possible client to them. So you could go on what is called the RFP system inside of Bubble. It's basically, if you go on the site, you'll see something that says hire an agency or a freelancer or a contractor. And then there's a system, you submit your idea, and you don't have to be super elaborate if you want to keep it private. You'll get about 50 replies, and 50 people are willing to get on the phone with you and talk through your idea with you and understand the Bubble's a good fit. So there's 50 hours of free consulting you can get. Little trick.
Super. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other ideas? Were there any questions in the chat maybe I missed? Any advice for those who build healthcare space? Yeah, this one's a tough one. HIPAA compliance. There's a tool called Xano, Xano, which can be helpful. It's HIPAA compliant. and you can hook it up to Bubble. So if you want to build a HIPAA compliant Bubble app, it's theoretically possible, but you have to hold all your data outside of Bubble in a tool like Xano. Xano is a no-code database. So I'll just put that there. And it's HIPAA compliant. I would say it's very tricky. Like, it's not elegant. It's kind of cumbersome to work with. There's still no great solution for the HIPAA. Oh, I thought one, Caspio. I don't know. Hopefully the person who asked this is still on the call. But Caspio is a great one. It's hideous looking, so the design is not very nice, but it is HIPAA compliant and it's both front end and back end. So that would be a really good tool. Okay, another question. I started playing around with Bubble and I just have been to YouTube videos depending on the topic. How do I add Google sign-in? Okay, is this a question? Yeah, adding.
Sorry,
Google...
no, that was not a question. Sorry, I just meant
okay.
It was just more helpful. Like, you can just start YouTube looking at YouTube videos.
Yeah, it's super. It's like, and that kind of thing is super easy too. It's like 5 minutes to add a Google sign into your app. Maybe not 5 minutes, but you get what I mean. So yeah, you can type pretty specific questions into YouTube and get really great results.
I had another question, Matt, if you have a minute to stay on. Any advice around like how you think about starting off, maybe just to get something on the market quickly, to start with like a simple and easy tool, and then maybe later like switching to a more complex platform like Bubble, and like any kind of two platforms are like easy to transfer between one or the other? I'm just like conscious of doing double work, but
yeah.
Yeah,
no, it's a great question. This came up with Teresa, like Bubble would definitely work for her, but she probably would be better off using a simpler tool like ShareTribe. But it's a good point because you're not going to be able to transfer your apps or your prototypes between platforms. Usually each platform is its own isolated environment. Usually they don't have any export of the code or export feature. So you're stuck in that environment and you have to rebuild. I know it can feel like double the work and like annoying, but the reality is 99% of the time you got to throw away your MVP anyways and rebuild everything. So whether it's on Bubble, you're going to end up throwing it away and rebuilding it on Bubble or rebuilding it somewhere else afterwards anyways. So it's just the natural, don't be scared of it, maybe embrace it. It's the natural evolution you go through as you're building your product.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. No? Okay, well, you got my email. If anyone ever needs anything, feel free to reach out. I might be a little slow, but I'll try to help you as much as I can.